Good morning, everyone. We will be starting the webinar session in the next 2 to 3 minutes. May I request all the attendees, apart from the panelists, to kindly keep their mics on mute at all times. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, to this really exciting session on data analytics and knowledge as drivers for systems change. First and foremost, I would like to really thank both our panelists, Mr. Parmesh Shah and Rikin Gandhi, for joining us at this really late hour. It's 11:30 p.m. in the night for both Parmesh and Rikin back in the United States, and they have graciously agreed to join us for this really exciting session. So thank you very much. And as you can see, there are a lot of attendees, especially all hands from JEEViKA, who again rose up and they're really excited to listen to both of you. So thank you very much for joining us. Let me first introduce our first speaker, Mr. Parmesh Shah, who of course needs no introduction, at least within the JEEViKA ecosystem. Parmesh is the global lead for rural livelihoods and agriculture jobs, and prior to in his position, he provides leadership to banks work in these areas of rural livelihoods and agriculture jobs, and supports development of global knowledge and learning in these areas, offering solutions to clients and other development partners. He previously led the Rural Livelihoods and Development Cluster in South Asia region of the World Bank, and is involved in designing and supporting a number of rural poverty reduction and inclusive growth programs in the region. His current areas of interest are economic and social organizations and networks of the poor, making markets and public services work for the poor, social entrepreneurship, ICT-based innovations in agriculture and rural development, promotion of on-farm and off-farm activities, and public-private partnerships. Prior to his current position, Parmesh worked as coordinator of the bank-wide community of practice on participation. In this role, he supported development of operational knowledge and learning across the World Bank groups on community-driven development, community participation, participation in development of country-owned poverty reduction strategies, and social accountability mechanisms. Before joining the bank, Parmesh has worked for government, civil society organizations, foundations, and other bilateral and multilateral development organizations in Asia and Africa region. He holds a DPhil in development studies from IDS Sussex, MA from IIM Ahmedabad, and BTech from agriculture engineering from Pantnagar in India. Parmesh is the leading voice of community-driven development programs across the world, and we can proudly say he was also the architecture of the JEEViKA program as we see it in today's form. Parmesh, thank you so much for joining us for this very, very important session. Really, really privileged to have you here. We're also having with us Mr. Rikin Gandhi. Rikin Gandhi is the co-founder of Digital Green. Give me a second, please. Global development organization that empowers smallholder farmers to lift themselves out of poverty by harnessing the collective power of digital technology and grassroots level partnerships. Rikin began his career at Oracle, where he received patents for linguistic search algorithms that he helped develop. Later, he joined Microsoft's research technology for emerging markets team in India, where he researched ways to amplify the effectiveness of agriculture development globally. Digital Green uses peer-to-peer farming videos to increase the efficiency of agriculture extension and services, and a shared logistics to market service to boost farmer money. DG is now building Farmstack as an open platform to enable the 2 million smallholder farmers across sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia that it has already worked with to control and share their own data with support from BMGF, DFID, Walmart Foundation, and others. Rikin has a bachelor's in computer science from Carnegie Mellon University, a master's in aeronautical and astronautical engineering from MIT, and is a licensed private pilot. Rikin, thank you so much for joining us, and we're really, really excited to hear from you on how Digital Green has in the past democratized data, not only in terms of information consumption, but also in form of information creation. We're really, really excited to have you both here with us. I would first request Parmesh to kindly share his views on data and knowledge systems for transforming scaled inclusion. Over to you, Parmesh. Parmesh, you're still on mute. Could you please unmute? Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Param, for the kind introduction. And it's very good to do this jointly with Rikin. Rikin and I have been now associated together for a long time together with JEEViKA and RLM and lots of things now, hopefully to do globally. And Rikin, are you in the US or you're in India?
At present, I'm back in the US.
Okay. So I was just thinking that when last I talked to you, you were in India. So I think he's right in saying that we are all burning the midnight oil here. Yeah. So glad to see so many people. I just checked the list of attendees, and I could recognize at least 15 to 16 people out of this list. So very glad to see. All of you are my social media friends. And I keep on reading your posts and also very kind of religiously follow what you guys are up to. I've been very privileged to be involved with JEEViKA since its conceptualization in 2006. And I have a very fond association of working with JEEViKA for a long period. And I really admire the dynamism and the innovation and the young cadre of JEEViKA, which really makes this the most youthful development organization all over the world. And we're still very fond of it. Param rattled a CV of my own. I have a new job from July 1. I have now taken over as the global lead for data-driven digital agriculture in the bank globally. And so that's the reason I can talk in this session. So that I want to talk to you about data, digital approaches, and large-scale development programs today. And I really want to congratulate also all the people who are organizing this series of webinar. JPAL, JEEViKA, Government of Bihar, Co-Impact, Bandhan, and all the other partners who have been involved in designing this Satat Jeevikoparjan Yojana and all the other programs which are happening. So I'm going to talk about the data-based approaches. I'll try to share my screen. Hopefully, it should work. Bear with me for a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, Parmesh, we can hear you.
Parmesh, you're on mute again.
I'm just trying to get my presentation back again. I seem to have closed it suddenly. So just give me a second. I'll just open it again. Can you see this screen now?
Yes, you can, Parmesh.
Okay. So I just want to talk about how data and digital transformation can transform large public systems completely. I think when we were designing JEEViKA in 2006, both data and the digital systems were at its infancy. And I think if we had all the things which are going on right now, in case of JEEViKA, if they were happening right now, I think we would have really had designed the program differently. And I think all the people who were involved at that time in designing, monitoring, evaluation, and decision systems in JEEViKA realized that we struggled for a long time in creating, moving away from manual to more kind of a digitized system. Data collection used to take a lot of time, and we never used to reach a stage where we could analyze data and take decisions based on that. Compared to that, I want to congratulate the JEEViKA team on this project, because I was reading about what you are doing, and I find that you have taken the digital approach from the very beginning, and you have digitized data collection.
Could I please ask all the attendees to keep their mics on mute, please? Thank you.
So I think what we are seeing now clearly is a very transformed way of, running these development programs. And I realize that you have an app by which you collect data. You have also have a lot of portals, dashboards, all those things you have here. And I think which is very different from the way programs were designed earlier. So I think service delivery in development programs can be completely transformed through data-driven digital approaches. And this when I look at globally on how programs are being delivered, I think you can completely transform how citizens, users, farmers can access information and services. And you are moving from communication devices to transaction and information devices. You are using digital technologies as an enabler to achieve key development outcomes. And you are also creating an ecosystem of digital and data innovations. And also how supply side institutions can take feedback, take decisions, and then provide information and services differently. I think what is very unique in India is now a very good kind of an Aadhaar system. We have a very good digital payment system, and you have a very good system by which we can collect information through a lot of applications in a very quick and transparent kind of manner. Personally, I feel that we should never design a community institution platform in 2020 without blending the community platform with the digital ecosystem. So clearly, you can see this is the design of NRLM, which we had, where we were talking about platforms of poor, human social capital, support institutions, and livelihood services and all. But there was no digital part in this at all. But if you now look at, you have high number of digitized transactions, increased access to technology, a lot of digital empowerment. This is the first year post-COVID where the rural internet users are more than urban internet users in India, which is very unbelievable. This change has happened in the course of 6 to 8 months because people are forced to use digital methodologies for interacting. And I have seen over in the bank, I am accessing lots of WhatsApp groups where I am getting direct WhatsApp messages from the community, and we are doing virtual missions in which we are getting a lot of information through virtually from communities all over the place, so which was never done earlier. So communities are also more empowered. There's a lot about cost-effective digital content which is being created for the poor, and the work done by Rikin and Digital Green in creating lots of digital videos and then using Pico projectors and digital, communication to really communicate very rich content, localized, good quality content is there. E-payment gateways very strong. You have a lot of your banking correspondents delivering a lot of DBT-based pension services during COVID time, and I think that's very remarkable. I think something which is completely unthinkable. And during COVID time, the ability of digital payment gateways is unbelievably strong. There's also efficient decision support system. We are seeing this in terms of the data on COVID being conveyed almost on daily basis by our health ministry and all that there. So I think what I personally feel is that we should restructure every community development project with now a digital ecosystem. I personally am now looking globally that we need to make at least 5% of the total investment has to be made in data and digital in every community development project. If we are not making that investment, we are doing it in a very suboptimal way, and we are not going to have the full outcome and results which we have there. Now, there are a lot of existing devices and applications. This slide I'm showing to you from 2006, 2007. These were all devices which were being used in Andhra Pradesh at that point of time. So you can see that you had video recorders, you have digital moisture meter, you have milk analyzer, you have Pico projector, you have a lot of bookkeeping mobile applications, electronic weighing machines, tablets and all. So devices were all the time there, but connectivity was poor and the data analytics was also poor. All this data, at one point of time in Andhra Pradesh, we had 49 applications but those applications were never talking to each other. So even having more data and more devices is not necessary that it will lead to better decision making. And the important thing is to have an architecture by which the data talk to each other and we are able to then take decisions based on that. Now, this is just a rough framework of how you could use the data platform for system improvement. So clearly data access and collection is a very important part of it, which means you cannot have outdated data. You should collect concurrent data and it should be collected on real-time basis. There's no point in having a data which has significant amount of time lag. So I think luckily with what you have right now in this program and what I have read about the program, you have a very good process of concurrent data collection. But it's not enough to collect data. World over, the data shows that only 30% of the data gets analyzed. 70% of data which gets collected never gets analyzed. So data analytics is now very important. And data analytics is more important for system improvement than data collection. And to give you an example is that if you don't know which part of your program or which part of your system is doing well, and you are not collecting market research data from the people who are your clients or consumers of your services, like in your case, it is the 100,000 households, you should really be on top of what is the distribution of those 100,000 households in terms of which are performing well, which are performing poor, which are not really performing according to the quality standards you have set up. And then also looking at system performance. There's no point in analyzing data if you are not using it for improving system performance. If data gets analyzed and never gets used for improving system performance, it's redundant. And that's why if you see a lot of global work on data analytics, both in public and private systems, it is only useful when you create a scorecard on performance out of data analytics. You have to have a bottom line performance scorecard from the data you collect. So even if you take the example of the graduation model, you need to have some kind of score on how your approach is performing, and that data has to be further broken down into geographies, spatial analytics, and also performance of different facilitators and different communities. What you see clearly that the biggest example of using data for improving system performance is Salesforce.com. Salesforce has digitized all the data from customer to the provider of services in a marketing. So all data, the customer has the same data, the marketing agent has the same data, the company has the same data, and everyone knows where the system is working and where the system is not working. It's completely end-to-end, and you should realize that the Salesforce has become one of the most valuable companies just because it has digitized all the data and converted all data analytics into performance. In fact, all the marketing companies were performing very suboptimally until Salesforce came into the picture. We need something similar in development, not Salesforce, but something which allows us to improve public system performance in the same way. And it cannot be done until you have use cases. By use cases, I mean that you should know what are you going to use the data for, what part of system improvement. You can use this to improve human resource management. You can use these use cases to improve the design. You can also bring out organizational change by data. You can also use the use cases to see how you can do training to identify best practice cases and then convert them into learning opportunity. And you can use this to do system improvements. And clearly, when I look at the Satat Jeevika Yojana, I think you have households and group members. So clearly, you are creating a household digital registry, financial registry, and livelihood data. There is a very important project going on globally, which is called Financial Diaries of Poor, which really enables every household to have a financial diary, and by which a household immediately is able to assess itself how it's improving. It's not enough that JEEViKA project has the data, or the managers have the data, or the others have data. Even every household should have data, and in terms of a very visual kind of a data, in terms of how it itself or herself, himself or herself is moving towards graduation based on agreed indicators. Similarly, the community institution data, digitizing of that, you have already digitized a lot of that data in JEEViKA, and then the staff, the facilitators, the managers of the programs, and also the policymakers and the governments. I think according to users, you need to use the tools. Now, system performance in a graduation program has to look at mobilization, it has to look at service delivery, it has to look at graduation, it has to look at growth of those households, and it has to look at sustainability of those households. And I think the time has come to develop precision, as we all have heard about precision agriculture, but we need precision messaging, precision analytics, and precision advisory and counseling. I think unless and until we develop very customized and precision kind of feedback and advisory for the households, we will not be able to have the full system impact the way we envisage the things to be there. I intentionally took this because it forced me to look at how digital tools could be used for this particular purpose. Now, most of the time, government and donor agencies also are more focused on input and output. We spend most of the time taking decisions based on input and output. The part which is completely missing is the performance management, which is in a way system performance. What are the performance management things we need to look at? We need to look at efficiency. It is not enough to deliver results. It is important to see how we can increase the efficiency of what we are delivering. So if you are delivering things at a very medium level of efficiency, and you are increasing scale, and you continue to achieve the same efficiency, then I think we should know there should be some indicators of efficiency. And when I look at the data and the reports on the Satat Jeevika Yojana, I don't see the efficiency indicators that well developed. The second part is effectiveness. How effective is the program? This is performance indicator. This does not come typically through MIS. It comes through data analytics and system improvement and collection of that data. And the third is then the impact, and fourth is the sustainable impact. Because even graduation, the data globally shows that households who graduate after a shock slide back into poverty again. And we know with COVID, the impact has been there. The data clearly shows that savings rates have reduced, and ability to service debt has been reduced. And so we have to look at sustained impact when we are looking at the graduation approaches, because these households are at margin and they can immediately slide back at some stage. So we need to develop some more, quantitative and qualitative indicators to do that. I think there's a lot of monitoring going on. I've seen process monitoring and lots of other monitoring going on, and I think you are measuring performance at various levels, which is very encouraging. But I would say that it will be important to develop a scorecard for every program in JEEViKA, by which you know whether your performance has moved away in 6 months. Are you improving performance? Are you stagnant? Or you are maintaining performance? It's important to have that. I think self-correction, in identifying areas for improvement, very important. I cannot believe that a program is working optimally all the time. There are things which happen in the program, and all parts of the program don't work equally well. So maybe you are working well in a couple of stages, but the third stage is you have some amount of drop coming in there, and data will help you do that. Then finally, I think system performance should help you incentivize performance. There's no point in collecting data about performance if you cannot incentivize it. So don't collect data without analyzing it all the time. Don't analyze without using the data for performance improvement, and don't collect data for system performance without developing an incentive structure on how to incentivize performance. Because if you don't incentivize performance, people slide back into poor performance. Even if you have good data, you can still slide back. Final thing I want to say is that we need to look at, and I hope Rikin talks about it, how do we use artificial intelligence and machine learning when you have too much data to really extract large data and then create analytics out of that, and then also create more visual analytics. And I think there's a lot of tables I see in reporting, and I see less visual analytics. Then we are not able to immediately understand where the problem is, which part of the program is not working. I think visual analytics and lots of new softwares will allow us to do that more. And I would also make a case that we should not use these tools only for this Satat Jeevika Yojana, but should take it to the whole Jeevika to enable system performance. So I'll stop there. I think I've taken more time than usual. And you can see I'm not talking about the typical Jeevika things. I'm obsessed these days in my new role on data analytics and digital tools. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening to me very patiently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parmesh, for this really insightful talk. I think we had a number of key messages to look at. That data collection in itself is not really the end. It's actually data analysis and data usage, and actually involving communities as stakeholders in using this data, which is very important. You talked about the fact that precision application of data is becoming more and more important. And I think to that extent, SJY in itself is a precision intervention within the larger Jeevika ecosystem. As opposed to 12 million households, we're focusing on a much smaller targeted set of 100,000. So this in itself is an example of precision intervention to begin with. And with an intervention like this, I think the data system approach that you talked about makes a lot of sense. I'd at this point move to our next presenter. We would still keep taking questions in the Q&A box, and in the end, depending on how much time we have, we will take a few questions with our presenters. May I request Rikin to sort of give his presentation, and then we'll come back with Q&A. Thank you, Parmesh, and over to you, Rikin.
That's great. Thank you so much, Paramveer. Thank you for the kind introduction. And it's fantastic to be following Parmesh, who, as he said, has been such a close collaborator with our work across India and globally. And I really want to appreciate and acknowledge Jeevika for the very close partnership that we've had over the years. That has really defined what digital green has become, and we're so excited about continuing to build on our partnership with so many of you who are on today's call. So what I wanted to share today was how through the various partnerships, including with Jeevika, we've been able to see the various use cases of data and how we see the future of using data exchange as a platform for driving even greater complementarity and collaboration across the food and agricultural ecosystem in Bihar, but more generally as well. So our work at Digital Green started by focusing on the challenge of agricultural extension, which of course in the case of Jeevika is very much led by the huge community level cater of community resource persons who do the hard job of traversing large distances and meeting with a diversity of communities to do the mobilization efforts of farmers into self-help groups of women, and doing the various types of livelihood and related type of training programs. And as you know, at Digital Green, the main sort of hallmark of our approach has been focused on using videos that are by farmers and for farmers to share the practices that organizations like JEEViKA have been promoting to a wider scale of using digital technologies. And the approach centers on building the capacity of these same community level cater of individuals to produce these short videos and to collect data about who is the individual farmer featured in a particular video, who is the village resource person who might be facilitating that conversation, and what are the various types of parameters related to the subject matter that is being featured in that video. For instance, the crop, the location, the language, and the like. These videos then are shared, again, by this community level cater of village resource persons amongst self-help groups of women that JEEViKA has mobilized, and where, again, data is collected by those village resource persons about which video was shown at a particular location, at a particular time, and what were the specific individuals who were present during that video screening, and what were the questions that they asked, and what practices did those folks ultimately apply on their own individual farms as well as in their own respective households. And what I've indicated on these slides are the various data points that are collected at each stage of this intervention by, again, this group of community members and village level functionaries themselves. Of course, as a result of the whole COVID pandemic, many of these approaches have had to shift, as you're all very much aware. These community group screenings have had to be paused because of the requirements of physical distancing. However, because we already had these artifacts of videos that had been produced by and for the community, as well as this data about these various individual farmers, we were able to repurpose this interaction into a more virtual format rather than these large group screenings, such that these individuals could watch these videos on their own devices. And as Parmesh mentioned, given the proliferation of smartphones and connectivity that has only accelerated during this time of the pandemic due to the migration of youth, as well as availability of various networks, including geo, this has allowed for new modalities for us to re-engage these communities in the same way, while still being able to collect additional data about how are these individuals interacting with this content on their own devices, being able to track, for instance, which individuals are watching which videos, for what duration, and what questions and feedback are they expressing again. And that's allowed us to even try out new ways of engaging these communities now that many of them are having access to smartphone devices. For instance, we've built a WhatsApp chatbot for these individuals to access this content on their devices in a familiar WhatsApp format, as well as for those individuals who have smartphones to also download a separate standalone mobile app for them to, for instance, as Parmesh mentioned, maintain their own diaries about their sales and expenses, and be able to also get custom extension information. But with all this data that is being collected in different formats, it's important to recognize that there's different media that are useful for different use cases of that data itself. For instance, the type of data that was collected through the community group screenings about attendance and feedback and practices that were being adopted, that's more useful when you have an intermediary, like a village resource person who is collecting that type of data. And its scalability is, of course, dependent on the scale of the community level cater of field functionaries. But it is much more of a one-way type of flow of data collection for various types of monitoring purposes. But what's more exciting now is with these smartphones and WhatsApp and app-based interactions beginning to proliferate in these rural communities, there's even a greater opportunity for two-way exchange, so that it's not just collecting data for reporting purposes, but it's also engaging the communities with their own data so that they can, for instance, make more informed decisions about cropping practices based on, for instance, their sales and expense data and their balance sheet, or be able to pull pieces of extension information that they find most useful to themselves rather than just getting push-based messages delivered to them. And so what I wanted to share was a couple of examples of how the data can be used for several purposes. One is for targeting and performance management types of purposes, how it can be used to empower the communities themselves, and how it can also be used to connect communities with other types of service providers across the wider ecosystem. So this is a view to the same data that is being collected at each video screening about which video is being shown at a particular time and place by a particular village resource person to a group of self-help group members. And in this view, we're able to visualize what are the most popular practices that individuals are most receptive to, or what are the least practices of interest to these communities. And perhaps that can inform the production of new videos, as well as be used as a performance management system for evaluating various village resource persons. In addition, this is a view to, again, the same data, just organized in a video-centric view, where you can watch courses of videos organized by subject matter and language and location, and be able to not just watch the video, but also see the data related to how many individuals watched that practice, how many of them expressed interest in it, how many people actually applied that practice, because not all videos are the same. Some are more popular, some are less popular, some have more questions and others have less so. And this is, again, a use case of the videos, of this data, to serve as a variable for informing various types of knowledge sharing across the ecosystem of organizations, including JEEViKA itself, across the various districts of operation and the various district project managers, block project managers that are involved in that intervention, and to be able to share videos across their respective geographies. Further, this data is mapped onto a Google map, so you can see trends about the types of questions or adoptions of practices that farmers are expressing or applying in the field, to be able to, for instance, map perhaps an instance of a particular pest or a disease that might be spreading, to preemptively inform the production of new videos based on, or not even just videos, but also programs more generally, based on various types of vectors of interest that might be afflicting communities in a geographic manner. And then, in terms of using this data for empowering both the field functionaries, the village resource persons, as well as the farmers themselves, this data can also have a view to be able to enable the communities themselves, as well as the village resource persons, to compare themselves with their peers with respect to what practices they might be adopting, what others in their peer group might have done differently, and to foster connections amongst them. Here, for instance, is a view to an individual farmer of, again, the same data that is being collected at the time of video screening by, again, the same JEEViKA village resource person, nothing more than just the basic attendance sheet. But over time, what you're able to do is build a farmer profile of what are the series of videos that this one individual woman watched over time, what was those practices that she was interested in, what practices did she actually apply in her field, and how did that compare with her peer group of self-help group members, to again foster connections in the real world amongst these self-help group members, so that they can learn from each other. And essentially, our whole work begins by building on the existing informal social networks that these farming communities already have. Already they share information about what crops they grow and how they grow them with their family members as well as their neighbors. And already JEEViKA has a huge field force of village resource persons and community resource persons who have mobilized these communities into formal institutions like self-help groups and self-help group federations and farmer-producer groups of various kinds. What we found as the value of digital technologies of the type that I shared, as well as data, is that it has the opportunity to bring these communities and these partner interventions more closely together and to systemize the way in which information can be shared more efficiently, as well as to gather data and feedback back from the communities to target interventions and empower the communities themselves. But there's also an opportunity to connect this data to other types of services and other types of providers of marketplace types of solutions as well. So with that, I just wanted to transition to share about a new venture that Digital Green has been embarking on along with JEEViKA, and that is an initiative called Farmstack, in which we are looking to bring together the various types of data that organizations like Digital Green, JEEViKA, and many others in the agricultural development space are collecting about and for farmers to be able to share data with each other while ensuring that the individual organizations' data usage requirements are maintained, so that there really can be win-win opportunities to bring complementarity across different organizations' interventions, and at a farmer level, so that a farmer can get access to more targeted extension information, as well as access to market types of services in a way that the farmer themselves is able to control their data for themselves and have a unified view of their own data to make more informed decisions and share data with actors at a systems level as they choose and with their the farmers' own consent. And so what Farmstack is a digital infrastructure to power the exchange of data across the multitude of organizations. In Bihar, there's so many now agri-tech startups, in addition to JEEViKA's own work, various NGOs that are working in that space. And what we're seeking to build is an open system that really addresses the issue of why people don't share data today. Currently, there's typically just a binary choice between I might want to share data with you or I don't trust you to share my data because I feel that you might misuse my data, take a credit for the work that I've done, or perhaps be extractive of these communities or exploitive of them. And so with Farmstack, what we've sought to do is to really address these issues of how do people trust that they can share data with one another with various types of usage policies that enforce the various types of security requirements that organizations would want to have so that they don't lose their proprietary or privacy-sensitive types of information with one another, while having the ability to discover other organizations' data that can add value to their own work and have a way to know which data is valuable to the type of use case that I'm trying to build. And so the key components of Farmstack are to build a peer-to-peer data secure process of sharing different types of content and data with organizations without any third party, Digital Green or any other, in the middle. And to have the ability to connect with other organizations, data transformation and discovery services. As Parmesh mentioned, there's many organizations from Microsoft to the CGIAR platform for big data in agriculture and others who are building various tools, including some AI-based models, to take agricultural data and enable the discovery of insights that can provide more targeted extension, precision agriculture types of advice, as well as many other types of advisories. And with Farmstack, what we have designed is a protocol to enable this exchange of data in a peer-to-peer way just between one organization who might have a set of data that they're willing to share with an organization B, and for them to define their own usage policies around what kind of permissions and rights that they're willing to share that data with that second organization. And it goes beyond the typical models of access control of data, wherein, again, it's usually just a binary. Either you share data with somebody or you don't. And instead allows for a greater flexibility of usage policies, including setting expiration dates of, I might be willing to share a data with an organization for a limited period of time, or I might be willing to share data but only in aggregate or anonymized form, or I might be willing to share data only for a particular service or use case that data is going to be utilized by that third party. And what we envision is that this architecture could, as an open source initiative, could really catalyze a larger ecosystem of organizations so that they really build complementary services and applications with one another in a way that they trust one another with respect to the data that they share with the usage policies that they define for themselves, and reduce the type of reinvention of the wheel and duplication of effort that we so often see in the sector. So just to conclude, before I show a short video about how we see this coming together in a real practical way for a farmer, I just want to conclude by sharing our overall thesis is that data alone or digital tools alone, of course, have limited value in and of themselves. The kind of work that JEEViKA and many other organizations are doing in the field with respect to physical investments, human capital mobilization, political institutions, and finance are necessary precursors before data can add an amplification role in terms of really improving the efficiency and impact of that work. With that, let me just share, if I can, a really short 3-minute video with all of you on how practically we see this approach adding value at a farmer level.
Savita is a chili farmer from Bihar in India who is part of a farmer-producer organization that meets regularly to watch Digital Green's videos on good agronomic practices. She has been struggling to find buyers and sell her crop at a good price. To sell her crop, she needs information on potential buyers and what they demand. Her proprietary data on demand rests with buyers themselves, who either don't know how or are unwilling to share it without data protections. Let's call this Node 1. Buyers need information on farmers like Savita and her chili supply. But Savita lists her production and harvest plans with a local producer organization, which does not have easy ways to share this personally identified data without compromising privacy. Let's call this Node 2. We need an easy and secure way to exchange data across these nodes. Let's explore one example of a use case for Farmstack. Imagine a digital marketplace called Loop that uses WhatsApp chatbots to connect farmers with buyers. Loop requests supply and demand data from both the nodes via Farmstack. Producer organizations and buyers each define their own usage policies. The producer organization requires privacy and anonymization for farmers, and buyers require that their proprietary data is not publicly shared on the internet. Loop can use this data only after the producer organization and buyers each provide consent. In this way, Loop gets access to the location, the quantity, and the quality of the chilies Savita wants to sell, along with photos and videos of her crop to build an online catalog. At the same time, Loop also gets data on the quality and quantity of chili that buyers demand. Just like Loop, any marketplace service or a big box aggregator or retailer could request data directly from farmers or buyers in the same way via Farmstack's peer-to-peer architecture without needing to go through Digital Green or any third-party organization. Savita can choose Loop or any other service she prefers and sell her chilies easily at the highest price, while buyers get the freshest produce directly from farmers. Just as she shares her supply data, Savita can also share other data, from transaction activity with banks for better credit to production plans with researchers for better extension videos. In this way, we can keep serving the need of all rural communities and together build a resilient future.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rikin, for this really interesting talk from you. I think in a way this was the perfect successor to what Parmesh said initially in the beginning, sort of laying out the framework for how data should be used, how two-way exchange of data is important, and how it can be utilized for performance analytics. And then with your presentation, we could see many live examples of the same going forward in the field. At this stage, I'd request, any other questions if there are. Parmesh, we have one question from the audience, directed to you, which is pertaining to how do we build a more goal-driven data analysis system as opposed to, being in the current state where in many cases data analytics in itself becomes the end, as opposed to that data being then used for improved performance analytics. Moreover, if you could share a couple of other examples from your global experience of organizations which are really utilizing data in a transformative way, pertaining to the framework that you had earlier shared. Thank you.
Thanks, Param. So I think clearly it is not difficult to move from data analytics to goal. See, I think if the organization is obsessed with quality, then it will measure things. Quality cannot be amorphous. Quality is measurement. And I think you have to come out with a scorecard of every organization, whether you are in a development field or you are in a commercial field or something. So somehow the perception is that in development, we can just do, input and output and that's enough. I think performance measurement means that you have to come out with some clear goal of what you want to do. Suppose, let's take the case of 100,000 households who are graduating. You want to graduate them in 2 years, 3 years time. Are you able to graduate everyone in 3 years time, or you are lagging behind? Or you want them to have a survival rate of X%, or you want them to graduate and stay at that higher rate, or you want them to graduate to micro enterprises and become a microcredit client from being just a grant client or something. You have very clear indicators for each one of them, because graduation is also not the end in itself. You have to move from graduation to some other stage. Graduation is just a safety net. How do you move from a safety net, from a social safety net to a productive safety net to an enterprise, and then to a more productive. So each case you can have goal, and that data you can measure and get that. Even in case which Rikin is describing, you can clearly have things about prices, you can have things about markets, you can have things about productivity, and we are doing this now in Kenya. We are working with government, 45 local governments, and about 29 startups, basically. Each of them has now a performance goal. So productivity startup has a goal of increasing productivity by 30%. And it gets, part of it comes as a grant, and part of it comes as a performance incentive. That only comes in when you get 30%. So if you have to pay people according to performance, then you will measure it. That becomes the goal. Because if you are measuring people only on coverage, and most of the time government programs stop at coverage. Then from coverage, they come to outputs. And so we are better at measuring bank credit. I think we know how much bank credit JEEViKA has mobilized. We are also good at knowing, how much of CRPs are developed. We know about that. They are all inputs, outputs. But if we are talking about how many people have moved from point A to point B, then we need to have indicators on that. And these days, you don't have to do very long evaluations, as people would like to tell you that you need evaluation for everything. These days, if you have very good data collection system using analytics and AI and machine learning, you can come out with big data analytics which can tell you the direction you are going. It can even tell you which location you are doing well, which location you are not doing well, which livelihood you are doing well, which livelihood you are not doing well, which crop you are doing well, which crop you are not doing well, which types of households you are not doing well. You know, are there certain types of vulnerable households who are not graduating? So the data is allowing you to set a goal and then measure it and to find out the efficiency, effectiveness, and the extent of the problem. And then you can come out with unique precision strategies to overcome. So I'll stop at that. But Rikin's example is a very good example that if we can create a data stack in Bihar, what I would call is a development data stack, which a lot of people, there are currently 195 social entrepreneurs and startups which want to work in Bihar. So we had mobilized at one stage through Innovation Forum a number of them. Now it's the time that if we have data, we ask them, can you create good quality products and services from this data? If you are able to create that, then we are ready to work with you. You can suddenly see the extent of innovation that will be happening will increase exponentially. And then JEEViKA can scale up those innovations. But JEEViKA is very good at scaling up. But you should let a lot of people use the data to really create very good quality products and services based on data. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parmesh. Rikin, if I may, have a question for you. You talked about the fact that more and more now we are looking at a two-way exchange of data, and how communities which are actually generating data are also using it much more meaningfully. But that also brings up the question of building capacity at the grassroots level to really utilize that data in a more meaningful manner. What has been your experience so far in terms of communities taking up these new age solutions, and have they been able to really grasp the nitty-gritties of it very, very quickly, or have you been able, or you've had to customize your systems to make sure that they're simple enough for quicker take-up?
Yeah, I would say that where we found success is basically where the community themselves are able to see a really clear value proposition for the data that is being collected, in some cases by them or by others, for themselves. So it's very similar to, like, if you think about like how we all use Facebook or Google, right? In those cases, these services collect a lot of data about us, right? And we recognize that that they do so, and they do so to, for instance, target advertisements to us. And so in a similar way, where we found success is where you're able to give a very clear proposition for the farmer to see, for instance, if I track my own balance sheet of my sales and expenses, and if I'm able to use that to inform my production decisions, as well as get access to relevant extension information, they're much more receptive to it. Whereas if the data is, for instance, just data that is being collected for some higher level reporting purpose in a like more extractive fashion, then the communities, of course, don't see any direct value from that data, and therefore have almost no idea that even that data exists, nor do they necessarily care. And so what you have to create are these habit loops wherein data is being generated by the farmers or by a third party, and where the communities end up seeing direct value for it, whether it is access to information or access to a market service. And that then furthers the creation of more data that is then more valuable. And in a lot of ways, this is the core to machine learning and artificial intelligence-based systems, right? If you can incentivize the creation of more data, then that data becomes training data to build a model that over time can be further refined and provide a better advisory, whether that is a precision agricultural advisory or perhaps a linkage to an agricultural buyer or the like. And that's where we found the most success.
Thank you, Rikin. That's really, really insightful. Before we wrap up, let me just say that this has been a tremendously, insightful session. Listening to both of you and really sort of complementing the ideas which are being presented by both of you. I would just like to say that JEEViKA does sit on a gold mine of data. I believe that there is tremendous potential to be unleashed, considering the fact that this is a program with an outreach of nearly 12 million households, which basically translates to nearly 60% of entire rural population in Bihar. And the kind of data that can be generated through an institutional platform like this would really be transformative. I really second what Ramesh said earlier about how JEEViKA could possibly host the next marketplace for data-driven solutions in this area and really come up with transformative ways of using data. Before we close the session, I would just like to request CEO JEEViKA, Mr. Bala Murugan, who's tuned in into this session, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Paramveer, for letting me in, and thank you so much for agreeing to moderate this session. Thank you so much, Parmesh. As usual, I was listening from beginning, and I lost you for 2 minutes, and that loss also because each and every word you spoke contains some key messages. We carefully listened to all these messages. I've noted down the importance of scorecard, and then when the program goes in phases, there's a possibility of drop in some cases.
So your voice is a bit faint. Could you please be closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, Parmesh, and also Rikin. And what I was trying to say is that I lost for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes when Parmesh was speaking. That is also a loss because every word spoken by Parmesh had some key messages, and I've noted down all the messages. We need to do a lot of work. We started doing, as you said, when Andhra had at some point in time more than 45 apps. I think we are also reached the same stage where again same problem. So many applications are not talking to each other. We need to do that. And then one more important thing you said is that we need to design programs, community programs from day one with digital systems. That's what we are trying to do these days. Whatever interventions which comes in right now within JEEViKA, we are trying to put in digital systems. And again, that is very true. Whatever data we collect, I think we don't even use 10% of it in JEEViKA. You have a lot of data, more than 1 crore 10 lakh families. We have a lot of data. Of course, there's a possibility of improving the quality of data always, but we will work on all these things. And thank you so much again because we are positive of time, and I can't resist coming in. Thank you so much. And then Rikin's that last photo, beautifully explained the importance of data. And I just would like to inform you that the latest Pico projector we are almost going to have in another 15 days, another 5,000 LG, the good one. So lot of exciting work in future. And the last, we spoke, Rikin, about larger partnership of digital green with JEEViKA. I think it's time to finalize and then move forward because we spoke about all the importance of digital systems. Thank you so much again to all three of you and also to all the participants.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bala Murugan, and thank you to both our speakers for joining us at this really late hour. If there are any final words that any of you want to say, please do so before we close the session. Thank you.
Just would like to thank Bala for hosting me again. So it's always a pleasure to be back. And I think the good thing with JEEViKA is that it moves ahead. That's why a new challenge comes up. If you are not moving, a new challenge would not come. So I think we should not be afraid of the challenge, but just take on the new challenge also head on, as we have taken other challenges. So we are very encouragingly looking at what you are doing. I keep on following everything on social media, your Twitter platform and your Facebook platform, and would like to stay engaged in my new role. That's what I said. My new role is now on data and digital. So maybe we work together on that agenda specifically now, rather than any other agenda also with you. So, and also good to reconnect with a lot of people in JEEViKA who are in the audience. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mr. Bala, for the partnership and for this opportunity. It's such a great pleasure to be doing this jointly with Parmesh. I'm very much looking forward to building on our collaboration with you as well as all of you who are on today's call as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. With this, we close the session. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. इसका ये करो बना दिया होगा तो ये प्रेजेंटेशन करो. I'm Shiva, a young professional, Sata JEEViKA Yojana. Hope it has been a learning experience for everyone. Thank you for taking your time out and being here with us. I welcome you all to the last session, which focuses on digital infrastructure for frontline workers to assess quality support and training, a vital link in achieving our mission. So, I just request for the presentation to start. So when we look at our journey so far of the past more than 2 years since inception of Sata JEEViKA Yojana, a diverse dedicated field of team is involved in achieving the mission. The village organizations, more than 29,000 community-based organizations, which act as the local guardian of these ultra-rural households. More than 4,000 community resource persons and around more than 2,400 master resource persons who act as a co-partner with these households in the journey with weekly handholding and coaching. And then at the block level, district level and the state level, the varied set of project staff which is involved. So what we have reached now is the question is how to build their capacities periodically on different components to achieve our mission. Next slide, please. So what we are looking forward is innovative interventions leading to a robust virtual environment, community of practice and learning, which would ultimately lead to strengthening decentralization, demonopolization of knowledge, talent, capacity, increasing feelings of self-efficacy. When self-efficacy is an individual's confidence in his or her own ability to accomplish specific work tasks. It plays a very important role in determining an individual's interest and persistence in performing a particular work task, increasing professional satisfaction and retention, task sharing, and facilitating peer communication and knowledge sharing. So it's an honor to introduce our moderator for this session, Mr. Gautam Patel. Mr. Gautam Patel is a senior policy manager at JPL South Asia. Prior to this, he has worked with the government of Chief Minister's Office for the government of Gujarat and government of Rajasthan. Gautam graduated from the London School of Economics in Political Science and the Masters of Development Management. He also holds a Masters in Molecular and Cellular Biochemistry from the Oxford University. And since we are involved since the inception of Sata JEEViKA Yojana, he is the single individual who has given varied inputs in the whole SJY project, which we see. So, I hand it over to you, Gautam sir.
Thank you, Shivam, and we're very much looking forward to this fifth session of this conference. And this fifth is the last, and it's very forward-looking. We are looking at digital infrastructure. As Shivam showed us those figures, so the figures are very telling. They really show the vastness of how JEEViKA is working. They talk about the geography of Bihar. And aside of COVID times, we don't do travel and gather so much. I think the way digital infrastructure can help us is one, reach, but equally individualizing the fit of the supports for the people. So this session we are looking forward in terms of how can digital infrastructure support our frontline workers. This is their training, this is their expertise. Equally, what all tools can they have to do a job well? We are very pleased to have two excellent speakers with us for this session who have been pioneering in terms of the work they've done in digital infrastructure. We're certainly looking to hear from you some very good ideas. You're certainly working in the Indian context, very similar context for Bihar. We're looking forward to hearing more about that. So first I will welcome Dr. Sunil Anand. He's a doctor with many decades experience and in the corporate world, and he leads on strategic direction for ECHO. So I will welcome Dr. Sunil Anand. Please, will you tell us a bit about ECHO, and then you've had an understanding of what JEEViKA is trying to do, and the JEEViKA part in Yojana. So we would like to hear from you, your ideas, your learnings in terms of what we can be thinking about as we further strengthen the system of JEEViKA part in Yojana, with in mind the digital infrastructure. So please, Dr. Sunil Anand, please, I hand it to you.
All right. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really honored. Though Project ECHO is all about healthcare, so it seems, because doctors started it, but it applies in everywhere else. Can you hear me, Gautam? I want to be sure. Yeah, all right. So can I have the slide presentation up, please? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, like Gautam said, I'm a medical doctor, but now I serve as the Executive Director of ECHO India. We are not-for-profit organization based out of New Delhi. Now with a team of 103 people as of today, grown tremendously since December when we were 21. Next slide, please. If the motto or the tagline for ECHO is move knowledge instead of patients and providers. Though, like I said, this is going to be predominantly healthcare, but I'll try and relate it to other verticals as well and how it helps JEEViKA. In healthcare, 70% of people that come to tertiary care hospitals like All India Institute don't have to come there. It is because downstream, the capacity isn't there to treat, and therefore they move. So ECHO's tagline is, let's move knowledge instead of patients and providers. Next slide, please. So what are we trying to aim at? Next slide. The goal of Project ECHO is to touch the lives of 1 billion people by 2025. Now, that's not the end. The goal is always something that has a finite number. We believe that once this is achieved by 2025, the community and the world will take it over and get the access to knowledge to the 6 billion, we believe, who don't have knowledge at the right place at the right time. Next slide, please. Project ECHO was started by Dr. Sanjeev Arora, a medical doctor. He's a Regents Professor at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque in the United States. Well awarded person, and the only fourth person to get the University of New Mexico's Presidential Medal for the amount of work he's done in healthcare around the world. Next slide, please. It's important to tell a little story as to why Project ECHO actually came up. We know that people are not getting the treatment at the right place at the right time. People from villages are moving up, and that's not fair. They get a double whammy. They lose income as well as having to travel with family, the expense. So both ways they are affected very much. And if we could set up a hub and spoke model so that we can train local people to sort out local problems, that's the way to go. We are very firm believers that community problems need to be sorted out by communities, not from above down. I will add one special line that Mrs. Rohini Nilekani taught me. All of us refer to these people as a last mile. That's where the problem really lies, because we see everything from the top. If you look at it from the first mile and say, the problem lies there, let's find a solution. That is what ECHO is based on. Next slide, please. So in 2003, when Dr. Sanjeev Arora, he was a hepatitis C specialist and the only physician in that institute in New Mexico, and his team, sorry, not the only physician, his team were the only state people that treated hepatitis C. There were 28,000 people to treat, and Sanjeev Arora and his team would say, what, 150, 200 patients a year? So he went back and said, why is it that I can't get people treated closer to homes? So he traveled to 21 GPs and told them, why don't you treat hepatitis C? Here is the manual, here's the SOPs. And they said, no, too complicated. So he looked back and said, how was I trained in medical college? I presented a case to a professor, then another case to a professor, then another case to a professor. And in that presentation of cases and my problems is where I became a specialist. So he connected these 21 sites at that time on Skype and conducted virtual clinics. People would present their cases to them and they collectively sort it out. After 18 months of the program, he published a paper that showed great success, and I'll come to the paper a little later, that actually showed that you can train local people to do specialized care. Today, we are in more than 41 countries where hubs are placed and 158 countries where learners are sitting. So it's that wider network today. Right. Next slide, please. So this is what the network really looks like. So in the big square, you'll find Dr. Sanjeev Arora, who's the hepatitis specialist. You'll find a psychiatrist, you'll find a pharmacist, and an infectious disease. Now this is for hepatitis C. If you've got it for cardiology, the team will change. Now all the small squares at the side that you see are people presenting cases one by one, and collectively they sort it out. Dr. Sanjeev Arora doesn't tell the doctor, do this. He asks the other people, what do you think? What else should he have done? So conversation takes place. That conversation is the heart of ECHO and where maximum learning really comes in. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'm sorry. So after 18 months, he published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2011 that showed that with this telementoring model of case presentation and sorting out local problems locally, he actually showed that there was no difference between the results of the patients treated at the rural New Mexico versus the university with all its resources. This proved to the world that this model can be used to sort out problems in rural areas and get specialized healthcare. It's after this paper, 2002, that the graph for ECHO expansion really took off. People said, oh, if it's hepatitis C, why can't I use it in cardiology? Why can't I use it there? It went on and on. Next slide, please. So this is what it really showed, that you can train rural primary physicians to treat a complicated like hepatitis C. Please remember, or rather let me today's drugs paper was published at a time where treatment of hepatitis C was with chemotherapy-like drugs. And therefore, it shows that even complicated things can be carried out if people are mentored properly. Next slide, please. Now, so let's just come to India. Next slide, please. Okay. We have the same. We are here to. I was looking at the first slide that was shown in the beginning of the session, and so much resonated in it. So what is the current situation here? The current situation in India is a lot of them have good facilities and not people are not going there for treatment but having to move out. We need to reverse this. Remember, and I'll show you an example that we move forward. Many primary healthcare centers are well equipped. They've got the staff, they have a doctor, they have a nurse, they've got 25 ASHA workers attached to it, they've got the equipment, but somehow the system is failing them and therefore they're unable to get it and they move forward. Next slide, please. Okay. So how does ECHO address this? We do not ask for any new infrastructure. We say we will use your existing infrastructure, but build the knowledge capacity of the doctors and physicians and the ASHA workers, whoever is there at the peripheral, so that if their knowledge increases, obviously they'll be able to train people better. It doesn't impose anything. ECHO's got no program. We magnify or amplify your program at the rural, whatever it is that you want to attend. Next slide, please. And the goal really is that we need to reverse the trend. Next slide, please. Yeah. This is what the previous slide, please. Okay. It's a little slow. So, yeah. This is what the change ECHO really wants to bring. We do not want our tertiary care hospitals Imagine if All India Institute or NIMANS in Bangalore or the large hospitals had 70% reduction in their patient load. Imagine their efficiency. And if the district hospitals and the PHCs or primary healthcare centers had all the patients being treated, imagine how much benefit will come. If anybody believes this will be done, let me point out that from 2020, 88 million people accessed healthcare in rural areas. 8.8 crore people access healthcare in region. Next slide, please. I'm going to spend a little extra on this particular slide because this is the heart. If you understand this, then any model, anything that JEEViKA wants to do or any organization wants to do. So what are the 4 pillars? One is we use technology to leverage scarce resource. In healthcare, it is a specialist. In your case, it may be somebody who knows who's handled poverty, how to get food, how to get money, how to get whatever aspect you want to go. We amplify that person's capacity 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold. Rather than go one by one, he can now get 25 on one and amplify it. And we use the Zoom technology to do that. 2 is the best practice. Now, if you look at a problem, somebody somewhere in the world may have a solution for it or have solved it. How do you get people together? To get like-minded people together on a platform and discuss and converse and collaborate on that problem is where you will find that best practices emerge, that this is the best way. This is being used by water security by RGM. How do you get clean water in every well? Some municipalities have done a good job, some have not done a good job. They get together, share notes and come up with things. Third principle is case-based learning. It is not cooked up sort of a situation that, okay, what would you do if a patient with 55 came? No, actual problem. I will present my patient with my problem and ask them, get them addressed. While you're doing that, 24 other people are listening. So everybody collaborates. And then, of course, we have a web-based database that tracks it all. And I'll just spend 1 minute. I think enough is being spoken about. So this is where, if you use these 4 pillars, a lot of conversations take place. Next slide, please. Now, the critical component in medical is case-based learning, whereas in other applications, I say it's conversations. It is not good for the expert to tell, okay, do this. It's for the community to discuss among themselves and talk to each other, collaborate with each other, find a local solution to the problem. We are using this today in education, water security in the United States, in policing, nuclear weapons, and believe it or not, biological weapons as well. Next slide, please.